Tom, this is Bob Lazzari and Tony D'Angelo in Eastern Connecticut. Thanks for coming on the show tonight. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Good evening, Tom.
It's great to be with you guys.
And Tom, first of all, I gave our viewers a little of your background about your victory total and the fact, I also should tell our viewers, Tony, he took teams to 12 NCAA tournaments, 8 of them while in Texas. He went to 8 NITs. He's one of 8 coaches to take 4 different schools to the NCAA tournament. And Tom, first of all, I want to take you back and share some personal stuff with you. My father was a big, I lost my father this past June, and he was a huge fan of yours because he had worked in Stratford all his life. And he would always, he'd always have great things to say about you. And when he found out that I was thinking about going to Fordham, well, that was basically, I had no choice in the matter because my high school football coach, Lou DiFilippo, who you probably came across over the years, was on me to do that. And then when you took over at Fordham, I believe the same year I started there, it was kind of a small world type thing. And but at Fordham, I remember probably passing you a few times, and you always were nice enough to say hello. And you probably are very familiar with some of the guys that I actually roomed with, Dude Tongao and Ed Bona, and
wow.
Played pickup games with, sadly, the late Tony Faust. I played a lot of basketball with him and David Maxwell. These are guys that probably take you. I know they go back a long way with you, but you probably have some good memories of your days in the Bronx.
Yeah, absolutely. Those kids from that 8-year period are very close to me. And, you know, today with all the social media and Facebooking and Twitter, there's so many ways of reaching out and getting in contact. And a lot of the players who I had lost contact with over the years, with all the changes of phone numbers and address changes I've made, let alone what they've made, it's hard to, you know, keep total touch with everybody. But it seems like just about every player that played for me at Fordham has stayed in touch. And it's a theory I have about this great profession that I was able to coach in at the college level for 36 years, is that you really have a big family. And you know, I always tried to treat every player like they were part of my family. And my son played for me at Texas, and he said that I treated players better than he was treated. But those kids were special. We didn't have much, you know. We didn't have the facilities. We didn't have big budgets, but, you know, we traveled together. You know, we literally lived together, and we took great joy in representing Fordham. And all my kids graduated, you know, for my 8 years there.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them have gone on to be very successful in many different areas. And that gives you a great kick, but not just the players, guys, but the kids who broadcast our games. I know that, you know, just mention a few of them.
Absolutely.
Mike Breen, Michael Kay, Bob Papa, Charlie Slows. Those are just a few of them. And because we were successful, we had good teams. WFUV, the radio station, became popular. And on Sunday nights, they developed their own talk show, which I would go on every week during basketball. And they started bringing in people like Fran Healy, who was a teammate of mine and the backup catcher for the Yankees.
Right.
You know, in the late 70s, you know, Fran and I played Double-A baseball together. And through Fran, they were able to get the New York Yankee players. Michael Kay made some great connections. But it all started with winning. It all started with success. And I learned that at a very young age, playing at the University of Connecticut. Played on 4 championship teams there. And we all stick together. We're like family. We're like brothers. We have reason and a strong desire to keep going back to the university so we can, you know, relive the past. And every year we get better and better. You know, they now introduced me at UConn as the leading assist leader of all time, and yet we didn't keep assist totals in those days.
Yeah, isn't that something? And I should tell our viewers, Tony, Tom Penders did star as a center fielder for the baseball team and a point guard on the basketball team. This is the mid-'60s. So, and then And then, Tom, my father used to, of course, working at Sikorsky for years and years and years, he would tell me, well, first of all, you're familiar with all the softball and Rebestis. I know you've been through all that. And my father used to tell me, used to bring home the Bridgeport, the Connecticut Post, used to be the Bridgeport Telegram and Bridgeport Post at the time.
The
And
2 editions.
that would share your exploits as coaching those teams down there. So you had such a great rapport with the inner city kids there, and then here you go. You find yourself at Columbia and Fordham. Now, these are two schools at the time, Tom, known for their scholastics, obviously. But how difficult was it back in the late 70s, early 80s? I'll give you the Fordham years. How difficult was it to recruit against schools like St. John's, Syracuse? Were you looking for a different type kid altogether?
Well, when I went to Fordham, I had coached 4 years at Columbia and just had turned that program around. And in my last year at Columbia, 1977-78, we beat Fordham twice, quite easily that year. And Fordham had sunk really low. I believe they had 5 straight 20-loss seasons, something like that. And they were actually thinking about dropping basketball down to Division III and forgetting about giving scholarships. And their vice president, a guy named Bill Crawley, contacted me at the very end of my season at Columbia. I was still coaching, and asked me if I would consider going to Fordham. And I thought Fordham was a great opportunity. It offered me an opportunity to work at a school that gave away athletic scholarships, and my assistant coaches wouldn't have to teach. And all those things that working at Tufts University for my first 3 years and Columbia for 4, those are things that either myself or my staff had to do. So moving to Fordham was just moving across town, and it was another challenge to rebuild the program. And, we did it without extra money, a big infusion of money or support. It was just done with hard work, with great kids who honestly came to Fordham first for the education, but some of them were outstanding basketball players. And we were recruiting against UConn for some players. We recruited regularly against Seton Hall and Rutgers in New Jersey, St. John's. These were all schools that we were head-to-head with during that time.
Right.
And it wasn't unusual for Fordham to be on the back page of the New York Post and Daily News because we played a national schedule.
Yes.
We played 4 or 5 games a year in Madison Square Garden. And really the whole campus, the whole Fordham community got behind the program.
I really was, and I was there, Tom, right behind you on the bench. You remember the Section 8 boosters, the guys with the yellow shirts? That was me. I'd hate to see pictures of it now, but that was me back in the day. But it was great. And as Tom said, Tony, the facilities, they're still in the old gymnasium.
Yeah.
They had built this Lombardi Center next door where I would shoot with guys that he had on the team, like Tony Faust, and it was almost more beautiful in there. But of course, the facilities are still there. And Tom Pecora there now trying to turn things around and get it back. But again, folks, we're on the phone with legendary college coach and Connecticut's own Tom Penders. Tony, question for Mr. Penders.
And Tom, good evening. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm going to show my age. I believe I saw you play in Yankee Stadium. You were playing for the Indians in Double-A in 1968 before Bat Day. And
yeah, that's true. We played against Thurman Munson's Binghamton Yankees.
That's right.
And the game was, I believe, had an 11 o'clock start. And the Yankees and Indians, the big clubs, played after our game. And that was in the 1968 when the Yankees were in last place and Cleveland was tied or going nip and tuck with Detroit, the big club. So it was a very interesting time. And that day, I had an opportunity to meet the great Mickey Mantle, one of my boyhood idols. When I grew up in Stratford, we had Willie Mays, Duke Snyder, and Mickey Mantle roaming center field for the 3 teams in New York or Brooklyn. So, it was quite a thrill for me to play in Yankee Stadium. Even though in the morning when we first started, all they had were the ushers and some family members of our team and the Binghamton team.
Yeah, and I do remember that game. And what I remember the most about that game, believe it or not, was Matt Galante playing on, I guess he was playing for the Yankees. I said, wow, that's an awfully small man to be, a potential major leaguer, but I guess he was a good player.
He was a very sound player,
Yeah.
and a very tough leadoff hitter who made contact. And in that year, Thurman Munson only hit like 250 in the Eastern League. It was a pitcher's league. The pitcher's average age was 28, and Thurman and I were rookies. I had made the All-Star team at the A level and moved up to Waterbury in early July. And, nobody hit for an average because the pitchers were so good.
Yeah.
But I could tell that Thurman was going to be a great player because he was a great catcher. He was a leader, a fiery, competitive guy. And he used to try to distract me when I came to the plate. He'd talk and tell me about my last few games, how lousy I was, anything to do to distract me. I mean, I couldn't stand him, when I played against him, but I grew to love him as a competitor and a Yankee fan later on when I was coaching at Columbia and Fordham.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and again, Tom has a lot of baseball roots, Tony. His brother Jim, the baseball coach, longtime baseball coach at East Catholic
Right.
High. And, of course, his two nephews are at the collegiate level. Jim, head coach at UConn, and, of course, he also has his nephew Rob is at St. Edward's University. So some good stock there. And, of course, his father led Stratford High School for years and years back in the day. My father remembers them days and used to tell me about them. But, again, Tom going way back there. And let me take it back. After you left Fordham, Tom, you end up in Rhode Island here. Just weeks, you get the job basically just weeks before the regular season starts, and you end up bringing that team to the NIT. I would think the highlight of one of the highlights of your long coaching career was in '88 when you led those Rams to the Sweet 16. You beat Missouri and Syracuse before you lost to Duke. But how about memories of the '88 team, I should say, in Rhode Island?
Yeah, first to take over a college program, I think it was October 4th of 1986 that I left Fordham and went to Rhode Island. And it was one of those things that never hit the newspapers. There was never any speculation about the job. They actually kept it very quiet. But it was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. And I really could see that Fordham really wasn't committed to basketball any longer. And they were talking about bringing in football or bringing it up, trying to recreate football.
Yes.
And I felt that, I was there 8 years. I had a great run, and maybe it was time to move on. I was very lucky that Rhode Island came after me. I didn't even realize the job was open. They came after me. I interviewed in early September. They didn't tell me anything until the day before I was hired. So that was a strange one in that I played at UConn. Our biggest rival in those days when I was at UConn was the University of Rhode Island. And I was probably the biggest thorn in their side because we had many close games with Rhode Island. Almost every one of them that we won, I was at the foul line having to make big free throws to close out wins. So it was strange that I got hired, but I fell in love with the school real early. It's a great campus.
It is.
They love basketball, and they hadn't had a winner in 9 seasons. So to go in there just a couple of weeks before the season started, or our practice season, it was a great run, to come out. And after our third game, we sold out every single game at the University of Rhode Island. And the next, I don't know how many games that would entail, but we had to move some of our home games up to Providence because Keeney Gymnasium, where we played, sat about 4,200. So we had to move a lot of our games up to the Civic Center, which is now Dunkin' Donuts Center. Yeah. And we also played a home game at Madison Square Garden. But that that team that year, 1987-88, is my all-time favorite as a season. And, getting to the tournament for the first time in years for Rhode Island and giving them their first wins in the NCAA tournament in their history. And we thought it was easy because we beat Missouri, we beat Syracuse, and lost by a point to Duke. I thought it was easy to get into the tournament and win, not knowing how difficult
it is to get back.
Yeah, that was some year.
Yeah.
It was an amazing feat to get that close to the Elite Eight, smallest state in the Union, and but it's all about the coaching and personnel. Again, on the phone with Tom Penders, and as we go along, you'll see a collage on our screen, different pictures of Tom at his various coaching stops, put together by our studio coordinator, Scott Hill. That's very nice. Tony, question?
And Tom, as far as one been there, and I say this most respectfully, one who has been there as far as the college program, you hear a lot about the scandals, the this, the that, the grades, the issues, and in a capsule description, what is wrong in your expert opinion, and what would need to be fixed in order to somehow make all of this somewhat fit better?
Well, the NCAA is at a critical point now with all this expansion and talk of super conferences and perhaps moving out away from the NCAA and having their own rules. There's a lot of things that they really need to take second looks at, and one of them just has to be, or happens to be, this APR situation that might cause the University of Connecticut to miss next year's NCAA tournament. It just doesn't correlate to graduation rates, and I think that was their original intent, and a well-meaning attempt for them to, make schools measure up academically and keep athletes in school and graduate athletes, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense because basketball has an awful lot of transfers. They also have, unlike any other sport, the transfers, by the way, and also there are a lot of kids that leave after the NCAA tournament in March, to go with a trainer and their agent when they're, clearly going to be a draft pick, or at least in their own minds they are, and they never finish up that semester.
Yeah.
So schools that want to play the game and beat the APR thing find ways to give kids grades, and I think that's wrong. Or they're giving away scholarships to guys in the band or, kids around campus maybe that have, really good grades, and so they have good graduation and APR rates. And I just think they would be better off saying with, every school, you have public universities, you have private universities. At Fordham University, their goal, their mission is quite different than the University of Connecticut.
Sure.
At the University of Connecticut, they might only have a student graduation rate of 60%. Well, a 60% graduation rate for the men's basketball team would be, I think certainly within reason to expect. But with the APR the way it's set, that may, that could perhaps be 80% graduation rate. Why do they need some formula like the APR when graduation rates can be the measuring stick? Every school has them. They're well published. I think it's wrong to expect a basketball coach to have a graduation rate that's higher than the regular student body because of, all the time commitments that athletes have.
Yeah.
But, at the University of Connecticut where I went to school, they don't hand out grades. They don't give grades just because the kid's on the basketball team. And I think that has hurt the University of Connecticut. Well, I'm not going to name the schools that hand them out, but we all know, who those universities are. You don't have to be a basketball coach to figure it out.
Yeah, and Tom gets more into this, Tony, and a lot of other issues with the NCAA, et cetera, in his book, Dead Coach Walking. Tom Penders it's called Tom Penders, Surviving and Thriving in College Hoops. We have a picture of that
Yes.
in our collage, a cover of that book, and so people should probably check that out because that's good stuff too. And then I got to take it back to your Texas days. You spent 10 years down there. You know, when you took over, Tom, they weren't drawing flies to the Irwin Center down there either. It was kind of like similar to Long Island, and it seemed I believe the attendance almost tripled while you were there, and you had an up-tempo offense, and it really put Texas on the map. And I know you had some health difficulties down there. I know it was a lot of stress and pressure down there, but you probably had no problem recruiting, seeing the type of game you guys played and the amount of people, I guess, and amount of athletes to choose from down that way.
Well, we had a beautiful arena. The problem I had to overcome was the University of Texas really, compared to the other schools in the Southwest Conference, did not have a commitment to basketball, and they had only been in one NCAA tournament in 15 years.
Yep.
They had, you know, in the previous 5-6 years under my predecessor, they established a half-court style that the fans just didn't come out and see. It's not like the Northeast where if you win, fans are going to come out. It's style down in Texas, or it was in that day. If you didn't play an up-tempo racehorse style of basketball, your fans wouldn't come out. So you're playing in front of empty gyms, and you know we certainly established our running game at Rhode Island, and that was one of the exciting things about doing it at Rhode Island. When we beat Syracuse, the final score was 99-96.
That's nice.
You don't see those games in the NCAA tournament very often anymore.
No.
But that's the way we played. And at Texas, the fans bought into it early. They loved it. They really, when I went down there, they may not have had the expertise and the deep interest in the sport, but they fell in love with our style and the way our kids played, and we started drawing big numbers. I think we went from a little under 3,000 a game to almost 12,000 a game my first year. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we kept edging up, and we were averaging about 14,000 my last 5 or 6 years there. So it was fun. The recruiting wasn't easy, though, because the Southwest Conference did not get a lot of television exposure.
True.
It was mainly a football league.
Yeah.
And, we didn't have national contracts with television. I started that by getting CBS interested in having us on, really going up to ESPN and selling our product to them. And sooner or later, in my second year, we went to the Elite Eight. My first year, we got to the second round, and after the Elite Eight, it was all downhill in terms of we didn't have to climb that hill anymore to get television. We had television coming after us, and we did play a great non-league schedule. We did not have one game in my 10 years where we paid somebody to play us. We didn't have that kind of budget. And I really didn't like that anyway. I thought that, we should not cheat our fans. We should play the very best schedule.
That's for sure. And I played a good schedule. Tony and Tom Penders won 208 games there. He became the winningest basketball coach before that was broken by current coach Rick Barnes. But Tom had 208 wins while at Texas. We have a couple more minutes left with Tom Penders. Tony, another question?
And Tom, you have such a diverse career in coaching, and starting, from the high school and moving up to the, what Bob and I were remarking about was you've really seen all kinds of athletes from all kinds of stratas and educational levels. And what's the next chapter for Tom Penders?
Well, I don't know. I'm 66, and I have had some health issues that I wanted to get taken care of, and I left coaching for 3 years to do just that in 2001, and during the last 6 years, I've had some things continue with my heart that I needed to have taken care of, which I have taken care of. I have a device now in my chest that, not only monitors my heartbeat, but, powers my heartbeat and the synchronization of the heart. So I haven't said anything about it. The first time I've even talked about it is on your show tonight. But it really gives me tremendous encouragement about my ability to do things. And, I haven't ruled out coaching, but there's so many things in my life I want to do, and I don't need money to coach. So if I ever did get back into it, it certainly wouldn't be for the money. I do miss the team. I do miss the, working with kids every day and helping them in their lives, and, just the feeling that you're helping, the feeling that you're doing something worthwhile, for the youth that they're on your team, they're in your family, and they continue to be part of your family. So I don't know. I've had offers to do some scouting in the NBA, maybe an assistant position. One of my players, Lance Blanks from Texas, is a general manager of the Phoenix Suns, and, maybe he'll need some help. We've talked a lot. I don't know. I really am not sure what I want to do, but I loved writing the book. I've always had a strong interest in media, and I have had some offers to do some things in television and radio, but this particular year, I did not want to have any commitments where I had to be somewhere to do something. I really wanted to take care of my health issues and also kind of regenerate the batteries, and I've been able to do that. I moved back to Rhode Island, where I love it. I've been at most of their games this year. It's been a long year for the Rhodey Rams, but it's a great school that's very close to my heart, and it's a beautiful arena. If you have not seen the Ryan Center on the campus of the University of Rhode Island, then you haven't seen the best arena in Eastern basketball. It's just a great place to watch a game.
Yeah, it's truly a beautiful campus. I've been on it. Never been in the arena, but the campus is in a beautiful location. And Tom, as you can tell by his voice, was very pleased and privileged to coach there. Coach, we're just about done. We could talk forever, and maybe next year at this time we could have you on again and continue. I think we got to half the questions we probably wanted to, but I want to tell you again, thank you for all you've done.
We're honored, Tom. Thank you.
For just to appear on our show, and just the memories I had growing up, and my father, God rest his soul, I know would love to have watched this show tonight. But again, keep in touch with us, and it's truly an honor and a pleasure to have Connecticut's own Mr. Penders on the show. And best of health to you, number
God bless,
one.
Tom. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure for me. And if your dad lived or grew up near Stratford, I'm sure in some way my dad, Jim Penders. I'm only Jim Penders' middle son, Tommy, in Stratford.
Yeah.
Because my father was such a well-respected man.
Absolutely.
And certainly the idol in my life.
Well, I'm sure maybe they're talking up there, talking sports together and looking down, Tom. I know they are, in fact. Take care, and we'll be in touch. And again, hope to talk to you down the road again.
Good night, Tom.
Anytime, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.